Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear students, you are welcome in this class. I am Dr. Dinesh Kumar, Principal Scientist from Division of Agronomy, ICR, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, Pusa Campus, New Delhi. It is 10th lecture, lecture number 10 of the course Agronomy of Oilseed, Fiber and Sugar Crops. The topic of this lecture is Adaptability, Climate, Soil, Growth Stages and Cultural Requirements of Groundnut. So, learning objectives of this lecture are to explain the adaptability, climate and soil requirement of groundnut crop. So, here you will learn in detail what are the atmospheric conditions like temperature, light and soil requirements, moisture, rainfall. All these parameters will be discussed about the groundnut crop. And next would be to describe the morphology, the external appearance of the groundnut plant, including its root, branching or your leaves, flowers, pods, etc. To detail the cultural practices for higher yield of the groundnut crop. We will see all these contents one by one. Let us start with the glossary. Conservation tillage. Any tillage and planting system that covers 30% or more of the soil surface, means 1/3 of the soil surface should be covered with crop residues after planting to reduce soil erosion by water. So, in this case it acts as a mulch. So, mulching is followed in conservation tillage and normally it is reduced tillage or zero tillage. Conventional tillage, full width tillage that disturbs entire soil surface and is performed prior to and or during planting. Generally involves plowing or intensive plowing. Numerous plowing, number of plowings are done in conventional tillage. A tilth is prepared, then sowing is done. But that is not the case in conservation tillage, where minimum tillage or no tillage is followed. Now, flowering for any crop is the stage when crop starts producing flowers. Harvest index, it denotes the quantity that yield of a crop versus the total amount of biomass produced. So, for a in a simple way, it can be defined as economic yield divided by biomass or biological yield and both multiplied by 100. pH, this is with respect to soil, measure of the acidity or basicity, that is alkalinity of a soil, the negative logarithm, that is base 10 of the activity of hydrogen ions, or more precisely as H3O plus aqua in a solution. Row crop, agricultural crop planted usually with mechanical planting devices in individual rows that are spaced to permit machine traffic during the early parts of the growing season. So, row crop is generally sown in line or line crop. Now, pegging is really very important process in groundnut and it is quite unique which happens in this crop. So, what happens, first of all, the flower is pollinated, pollens go to the stigma part and they germinate, and finally one gynophore develops into a peg, a kind of a stalk or you can say kind of thread that enters the soil, and after entering the soil it carries ovule also, and then it develops into a fruit, and fruit contains seed which are called as the seed or kernel, it is called as kernel. So, you would surprise that flowers are produced on the plant, on the shoot, but its fruit are produced in the soil by means of peg, and this process is called as pegging, P-E-G-G-I-N-G. So, in groundnut plant, after pollination of flowers, a stalk of fertilized flowers elongate and bend downwards, directing the developing fruits towards the soil. Hence, the fruit is going to develop in the soil. This bending and downward growth of stalks or or more precisely it is called as pegs, is called pegging. It allows young pods to enter soil and continue their maturation process underground. So all kind of development of seed and pods happened inside the soil. Now, primary center of origin, crop plants evolved from wild species in the areas showing greatest diversity and termed them as primary center of origin. So, here maximum diversity happens with respect to phenotypes and genotypes. Value added products, a general term that refers to agricultural products that have increased in value due to processing. Now, adaptability and climatic requirement about the groundnut. So, basically it is a day neutral plant. Its cultivation is spread in tropical and subtropical regions extending between 40 degrees south to 40 degree north latitudes. Semi-arid and arid regions are as suitable for groundnut cultivation as the humid tropics, which are the traditional homeland of the crop. So, in India it is mostly grown in semi-arid and arid conditions, and bunch types are more sensitive to climatic variations within their normal range than runner types. Runner types are also more resistant to drought than the bunch type. So, in the previous lecture you have learnt the differences in the bunch type or erect types or runner types, or you can say spreading, trailing. There were different categories, 5 categories of groundnut that you have learnt in the previous lecture. Now, so far temperature requirement is concerned, 25 to 30 degrees centigrade appears to be the optimum temperature for growth and flower production in groundnut. So, during the ripening period, it requires about a month of warm and dry weather. That means too high temperature can be dangerous during the seed filling stage. So, rainfall after maturity results in the germination of the seeds in non-dormant type of groundnut. So, groundnut may be of two types. Some are dormant, means seed will not germinate, and some are non-dormant. So, what happens if at the maturation stage or maturity stage rain happens and your soil gets wet, the non-dormant type will germinate and it will affect the quality and quantity of the groundnut pods. It is adversely affected at temperature above 35 degrees centigrade. Constant temperature above 33 degrees centigrade affects pollen viability. If too much of temperature is there, too high, say more than 35, then pollen viability is adversely affected. There will not be pollen germination, and then fertilization will not happen, and pegging will not happen, and finally there will not be formation of the pods and seeds. Lower critical temperature for growth is 13 degrees centigrade, means you need minimum temperature of 13 degrees centigrade for groundnut. Temperature affects the time taken for initiation of flowering. Lower temperature initially retards and then prevents growth, and the plant is generally killed by frost. So, it does not tolerate colder conditions or frosty conditions. Soil temperature below 18 degrees centigrade affects the germination of the seed, the emergence of the seedlings, and time taken for crop emergence. So, as many of you know that there are cardinal temperatures. Cardinal temperature means minimum, optimum and maximum temperature required at different growth stages. It is not that only one kind of cardinal temperature will be effective or optimum for all the growth stages. It will differ with the stage of the crop. For example, in vegetative stage you may need little higher temperature, but during reproductive phase, flowering phase, you may require little lower temperature. So, it varies with the stage of the crop. Now, coming to the light part, groundnut is a C3 plant, and light influences both photosynthesis and respiration. So, here C3 plants means kind of plants in which the first product of photosynthesis is a 3-carbon compound. In C4 plants, it will be 4-carbon compound, first product of photosynthesis. So, groundnut canopy responds to increased light intensity. So, it needs good sunlight and also good sunlight intensity. It is adversely affected by the low light intensity. If low light intensity is there, there will be reduction in the photosynthesis, and hence the dry matter production will be affected adversely, and finally the flowering, fruiting, all these stages of the crop will be affected in a negative way. About 1600 heat units are required to harvest a good crop of groundnut. Dear students, you might be knowing about the concept of growing degree days, GDD. A plant will mature only after receiving a cumulative particular heat units, particular growing degree days, then only it will complete its life cycle. So it is fixed for every species. Abundant sunlight is necessary for the good growth of the plant, and flowering was independent of photo period. Means it is not a photo period sensitive crop, it is insensitive crop. However, opening of flower buds and total number of flowers formed are highly dependent upon the light. When grown under short days, groundnut flowers later and produces fewer blooms than when grown under long days. So it takes long time under short day conditions for groundnut to flower. Low light intensity at flowering and pegging stage significantly increases flower abortion and reduce peg and pod number and weight of the pod and kernels. It is mainly because of reduction in photosynthesis. So organic matter or dry matter is not available for the development of flowers, pods and other parts of the plant. Hence light intensity is really very important for getting good yield of this groundnut crop. Now, what is the position about the rainfall? Groundnut can be grown in areas with rainfall as low as 300 to 400 millimeter. Therefore, this crop is more suitable for semi-arid or arid kind of climates. However, rainfall range of 500 to 700 millimeter is required for its commercial production. Well-distributed rainfall throughout the crop cycle is more important than total rainfall. It requires intermittent light showers with bright sunny days for flowering and development. So if there is heavy rainfall, it can adversely affect the flowering. Flower drop can be there and pegging can be inhibited under those conditions. Excess rain during pod development and maturity is harmful to crop owing to induction of vegetative growth and germination. It can withstand drought once crop is established. It can also tolerate flooding for up to 1 week, provided the water subsequently drain away quickly. Otherwise, if waterlogging is continuous for 10 days, 15 days, then that can kill or that can destroy the crop. Now, after seeing the climatic requirements and adaptability of groundnut crop, let us switch over to the soil requirement. So, ideal soil for groundnut is well drained. Here there should not be stagnation of water, light colored and loose and friable with high soil organic matter content. So therefore, you can see loamy soils or sandy loam soils are good that facilitate easy peg penetration and proper pod developments. If soils are heavy or clay textured soils, more clay in them, then penetration of pegs will be affected adversely. So, however, it can be found growing on a wide range of soils, maybe in aridozoles, alphizoles, inceptizoles and vertizoles. Dear students, these are the orders of the soil: aridozoles, alphizoles, inceptizoles and vertizole. So, therefore, sandy and loam soils are more suitable than clay soils for the cultivation of groundnut. Harvesting operation can also be easily done on sandy soils. Red soils that become hard or drying are not suitable for this crop because the pods are harvested by digging the soil. If soil is dry, too hard, then digging will be difficult. But in sandy loam soils or loamy soils, the digging is easy and you can harvest the pods easily. So far pH is concerned, it grows best in the slightly acidic soils with a pH of 6 to 6.5, but range of 5.5 to 8 is acceptable, but more than 8 pH should be avoided. Saline soils are not fit for groundnut cultivation, and waterlogging and alkalinity are deterrents for pod filling. Medium black calcareous soils having high calcium content is ideal for achieving good yield. because this groundnut crop particularly loves to take calcium. The calcium requirement is high in this crop. So, calcareous soils contain calcium, therefore, it can perform better under those conditions also. Now, coming to the morphology of the groundnut plant. Morphology is the external appearance of the plant, how it looks, what kind of roots are there, what kind of pattern of branching and growth is there, and what is the structure of the leaf, external structure of flowers or pods, etc. So, let us start with the root morphology. Groundnut is an herbaceous annual plant. Herbaceous here means it does not have any wood in it. Fairly well developed taproot system. It has taproot system means the roots have been developed from the seed and that part is radical. So, one major root is there which is taproot and also lateral roots are there in this. So, taproots may vary from a few millimeter in diameter in annual species to 10 centimeter in perennial species. The well-developed taproot system may penetrate even up to 130 centimeter depth in the soil and it rarely goes beyond 90 centimeter, means most of the roots are confined in the upper part of the soil. There are cultivar differences in vigor of roots. Spreading types are more vigorous than bunch types. In bunch type groundnut, the root growth is less. Formation of adventitious roots from aerial branches that come in contact with soil is there, but it is more in spreading or semi-spreading type of groundnut. Lateral roots appear in top 1/3 region of taproot. They multiply quickly and grow to a depth of 15 to 20 centimeter. Basically, lateral is similar to taproots, but they lack the central pith like in main taproot. Hypocotyle is that part which lies between the primary roots and one of the cotyledons. This is also known as the collar region, where root and shoot part join each other. Hypocotyle brings the cotyledon to the soil surface and its length depends on planting depth and may grow up to 10 centimeter, average being 3.5 to 5 centimeter. Now, you can see the picture of the plant. You can see the roots, main taproot is there, here, this one, and you also got laterals. Here also you got laterals and you can also see flowers, yellow color flowers are there and you can also see the pod initially and then at maturity stage and you can also see the seed or kernel of the groundnut. Now, coming to the stem part, the young stems are angular, usually pubescent means there are no hairs and solid with a large pith. Pith is the central part inside. As the plant grows, the stem becomes hollow and tends to be cylindrical and sheds hairs. The height of the main axis ranges from 12 to 65 centimeter. Generally, the bunch type have thicker stems, internodes are short at the base. So, as you know, the young stems are angular and it is pubescent actually, means it has some hairs. The laterals vary in number which determines the growth habit of the plant. Two distinct forms of growth habit are found in groundnut, have long been recognized and these are spreading type. It may include runner. In spreading it is runner, trailing, procumbent and prostrate. These are four spreading kind of nature and then erect. So, erect may be upright, erect bunch and bunch. There may be further three category in the erect, that is upright, erect bunch and bunchy type. A large number of intermediate forms also occur. Now, coming to the leaf morphology, leaves of cultivated groundnut are peripinnate with two pairs of leaflets borne on a cylinder and grooved petiole. Petiole is the base which holds the leaflets. There is a pair of stipules about 4 centimeter long with long alternate points which are fused with the petiole for about 1/2 of their length. The leaves occur alternatively one at each node. You can see the leaflet here, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the leaflets and one is your leaf. One complete means making of all these leaflets makes one leaf. Leaflets on main axis are slightly longer than the laterals. Size of leaflets varies from 24 mm into 8 mm to 86 mm into 41 mm. So definitely the leaf area index will also vary with the kind of leaflet a variety is having. Leaflets are pubescent, mainly on abaxial surface. Stomata appear on both sides of the leaf surface. Arachis hypogea, subspecies hypogea, has dark green foliage than subspecies fastigiata, but leaflet size is bigger in fastigiata. Now let us know the morphology of flower, peg, pod and kernel. It is indeterminate, it grows and flowering commences 20 to 30 days after emergence. It is quite interesting that groundnut is a kind of indeterminate crop. That means the flowering and vegetative stage can go hand in hand. They can go together. For example, initially there will be vegetative growth, branching, etc., leaf formation, and then flowering will also happen. And the vegetative growth will continue even after the flowering. Such kind of behavior of growth is called as indeterminate growth habit. So flowering is earlier in the bunch type than in the spreading type. Flowering period normally lasts 3 to 8 weeks, 3 to 8 weeks in the case of bunch type and 6 to 8 weeks in case of spreading type. Clear-cut difference. That is why the duration of the bunchy type or erect type is less compared to spreading type of groundnut. The most prolific period of flowering occurs between 5 and 11 weeks depending on the duration of cultivars and the season. 3 to 5 yellow flowers. Remember the color of the flower of groundnut is yellow. 3 to 5 yellow flowers are produced in the axils of leaves on the reproductive branches. Stigma is enclosed in the keel or self-pollination is the rule in groundnut. You must be knowing different kind of petals which are available in this legume plant and groundnut. So two petals are keel. Fertilization is completed in about 6 hours. It is very quick process. After pollination, within 6 hours, fertilization will happen, and before midday and after that, the flower droops and withers. So this fertilization is complete. The developing ovary pierces through the floral parts by activity of meristem to reveal an elongating peg, or this is called as gynophore. This is very important aspect, formation of peg or gynophore. So you can see here pegging in groundnut, and this is the shoot part. You have leaves, you have flowers. What happens? Flowers will get pollination, which is almost self pollination, and then the flower parts will shed, and then the pegs will be formed. Pegs will be formed from the base of the flower, and these pegs will go and enter the soil. This will come from the flower. This peg will come from the flower and enter the. Here the ovule and these reproductive parts have entered the soil, and the fruit development and seed development happens inside the soil. So many times a student gets confused that these pods will be born on the shoot part, but they are not. They are born on the in the soil underground. Now peg is a stalk-like structure, that is thread-like structure that bears fertilized ovules at its tip. Its growth is positively geotropic, means going towards the earth until it has penetrated soil to some depth, up to 7 centimeter it can go, and then it starts developing into a fruit. And as you know, the fruit of the groundnut is pod, and not all pegs formed grow long enough to reach the soil and develop into pods. So many will die in between. They may not reach the soil, they may be on the top of the plant, and more length may not be there, so they cannot enter the soil. Similarly, all pegs that enter the soil do not develop into the mature pods. So you can see here pegging process. This is your flower peg development, and number A is your flower, number B is your emasculated flower ovary at the base of gynophore, this one, And then you can see the C picture, emergence of peg from dehisced flower. So this peg has emerged. This is the peg, and you can see more clearly here. Now you see here these pegs, this is very close to the soil, and these pegs have developed into the fruit inside the soil. So this process is called as pegging. Now fruit is known as a pod, which is indehiscent, means it cannot break, it cannot split automatically, and has 1 to 5 seeds. This is important to remember, 1 to 5 seeds. Shell of pod contains seed. Morphologically, pod is pericarp, and thin skin that covers the seed or is testa. So you can see here the seed coat and the kernel inside. The seed is known as kernel. The kernel is about 55 to 75% of the pod weight and is composed of 2 cotyledons, which contain oil and other food materials. Now, after seeing the morphology of the groundnut plant, now let us see what are different growth stages. So basically you see germination is there, then seedling will be formed, then vegetative stage, then reproductive stage, and then plant matures. So these are the major stages of groundnut plant. So the growth stages are based on visual observation of vegetative and reproductive growth, described and defined by Butte in 1982. This widely adopted system described a series of vegetative and reproductive stages. So we'll see in the next slide, these are 2 important stages. One is vegetative, represented by letter V, and reproductive stage represented by letter R. Now see vegetative stage, it is divided into several sub-stages. So first one is VE. This is V for vegetative stage and E for emergence. So it is actually emergence, cotyledons near the soil surface with the seedling partly visible on the surface of the soil. Next is V0, or you can also call it as VC, because C is for cotyledon. Cotyledons are flat and open at or below the soil surface. These cotyledons are very important. They do some photosynthesis and provide food to the developing seedling. And then you can have V1 to V9 stages. There can be V2, V3, V4, and it is not fixed. It will depend upon species, subspecies, and variety. So first node to nth node, nth tetrafoliate, this is with respect to leaves. On 1 to nth developed nodes on the main axis, a node is counted when its tetrafoliolate is unfolded and its leaflet are flat. So this is the condition. Now coming to the reproductive stages, they are numbered from R1 to R9. So it is divided into 9 sub-stages, this reproductive stage. So R1 is beginning bloom, 1 open flower at any node on the plant. R2 is beginning of the peg, 1 elongated peg. Peg is your gynophore. The base of the gynoecium is gynophore. Beginning pod is R3, 1 peg in the soil with turned swollen ovary at least twice the width of the peg. This is called as R3, or beginning of the pod. Next is R4. Full pod here means development of the pod. So 1 fully expanded pod, 2 dimensions characteristics cultivar. Then R5 is beginning of the seed, 1 fully expanded pod in which seed cotyledons growth is visible when the fruits cut in cross section with a razor blade passed at the liquid endosperm phase. Then R6 is the full seed stage, 1 pod with cavity apparently filled by the seeds when fresh. Then R7 is beginning maturity, 1 pod showing visible natural coloration or blotching of inner pericarp or testa. Then harvest maturity. At harvest maturity, you can see the 1/3 of the to 3/4, 1/3 to 3/4 of all the developed pods have testa or pericarp. This testa is pericarp, outer layer. Coloration, fraction is cultivar dependent and lower for Virginia types. The last stage is R9, which is over mature pod stage. So one undamaged pod showing orange tan coloration of the test and or natural peg deterioration. So this is how we can divide the different growth stages of the groundnut crop. Now let us go to the cultural requirements, means how to cultivate actually this crop, how to go for land preparation, what should be the seed rate, how to go for seed treatment, spacing, all these cultural practices now we are going to discuss. So first of all, it is seed bed or land preparation. Seed bed preparation depends upon soil type, rainfall pattern and the cropping system. So number of factors will determine the seed bed preparation and what kind of tillage you are going to adopt. The land preparation will be different for conservation tillage as well as for conventional tillage. For the kharif crop, the field is given 2 plowing and the soil is pulverized well to obtain a good tilth. Good tilth is required for good contact of seed with the soil. Then germination will be better. Otherwise, if good tilth is not there, seed may not imbibe water and germination can be affected. Third plowing may be given just before sowing. In case of heavy infestation with perennial weeds, deep plowing is done in the summer. So summer plowing is always advantageous, irrespective of the crop, whether it is kharif crop or rabi crop. Plowing in summer or deep plowing is always useful for the crops. It is considered sufficient to secure good surface tilth to a depth of 12 to 18 centimeter for seeding groundnut. Making ridges and furrows and raised bed is preferable to flat beds in areas receiving heavy rainfall, regions of shallow water table and saline soils. So there are different methods of the crop establishment or sowing this crop. The most common or simplest method is flat sowing, which is done by farmers. However, certain special methods of sowing like raised bed, broad bed furrow system or narrow bed system, or there may be some other kind of manipulations of the beds can be helpful in saving this crop from water stress and also from excess water. The ICRI has developed a broad bed and furrow method for planting groundnut. So this method is good, that can be adopted and some farmers have adopted this method. In this method, after every 3 or 4 rows of groundnut is spaced at 30 centimeter, one row is left blank and it can be converted to irrigation drainage furrow. And in between 2 furrows, the bed is raised by about 10 to 15 centimeter. So this broad bed furrow system is quite useful. Bed and furrow method of groundnut sowing in the winter season has also recorded higher yield and oil content over other methods in Bhubaneswar. So it shows that this method is really good for enhancing the quantity and quality of the groundnut. Now coming to the seed rate and spacing. So through seed rate and spacing, one can easily manipulate the plant population. We need to have optimum plant population for groundnut to harvest a good crop. So far this population can be managed through optimum seed rate and spacing. So in India, patchy stand of the crop is one of the main reasons for poor seed yield. Means there may not be proper establishment of the crop, there may be there may not be good germination of the crop, there may be problems with the emergence, and finally we do not get optimum population of this crop. So groundnut requires optimum plant density for maximum exploitation of inherent production potential. The seed rate depends on type of groundnut grown, the season and the availability of water for the irrigation. Under irrigated and rain-fed conditions, 10 centimeter is optimum intra-plant spacing. Intra-plant spacing means within the row spacing, how far each plant is from the other, with an inter-row spacing of 30 to 45 centimeter. In some cases, it can be 30 centimeter. In other cases, it can be 45 centimeter, depending upon the varieties, soil and climatic conditions. For example, for bunch types, 100 to 130 kilogram per hectare seed is required. And for semi-spreading type, a plant spacing of 45 into 10 centimeter is recommended and for that a seed rate of 90 to 100 kg is required. So you can see for a spreading type the seed requirement is less, and for bunchy type or narrow this erect type the seed requirement is more. And you can also see that for spreading type spacing is 45 centimeter into 10 centimeter. See more examples. Spreading type Valencia types need wider row spacing of 45 to 60 centimeter, even more than 45 centimeter, and a lower seed rate. If you widen the spacing, the seed rate requirement will reduce. So here in spreading type you get just 80 to 90 kg per hectare seed requirement. Due to variation in seed size and seed viability, variety-wise seed recommendation is also different. During Rabi and summer season, bunch type varieties are recommended, and for that narrow spacing of 22.5 into 10 centimeter or 30 into 7.5 centimeter is followed. So here you can see the reason that during Rabi season or summer season the seed rate is reduced and the spacing is also reduced, mainly because this the growth of the crop will be less, therefore spacing is reduced. Closer spacing of 22.5 into 10 centimeter has recorded higher pod yield during Rabi under the irrigated conditions at Bhavani Sagar on sandy loam soil. So you can see that under winter conditions, Rabi conditions, the spacing has to be reduced. In addition to the plant density, the plant geometry of a crop is also widely recognized as one of the agro techniques for increasing the pod yield. The plant geometry of 20 by 15 centimeter was found to be better than generally adopted plant geometry of 30 into 10 cent. It depends upon several factors. You cannot say that this kind of spacing will fit under all conditions. That is not. Now coming to the selection and treatment of the seed. The right choice of variety is also there. One should select the varieties which are appropriate for that particular location. Secondly, seed is also important. We should have a healthy seed which is free from diseases and insect pests, etc. So about 30% seeds sown in the field either do not germinate or after germination due to low seedling vigor fail to develop into healthy plants. So you can see the germination is less, about 30% less germination is there. Then we need to compensate for this reduced germination. According to germination percentage, we should decide the seed rate. The problem of loss of viability is more in Rabi or summer produce. The Kharif produce can retain viability for a longer period. Thus, whenever we are going to select the seed, that should be taken from the Kharif crop, not from the Rabi or winter crop or summer crop. Drying of pods after harvesting is a very important process which influences the seed viability. If it is too dry or wet, then you may not get better germination. If seed is too wet, having moisture more than 15%, then it can be deteriorated by fungus and other agents. This loss of viability in Rabi or summer produce can be reduced by shade drying. The bunch type of groundnut is generally grown during Kharif season and as a rain-fed crop, and in the summer season as a irrigated crop. When crop reaches maturity during Kharif, invariably rains occur and seeds in the pod start germinating and heavy loss occurs, particularly non-dormancy varieties. This problem is severe in black soils having high moisture holding capacity. There the soils will be more wet. Foliar spraying of 250 to 1000 ppm of malic hydrazide at 60 and 75 days after sowing induces seed dormancy to an extent of 60 to 80%. If you expect these wet conditions and your variety is non-dormant kind, then you can spray this malic hydrazide to stop germination. This is very important activity in groundnut cultivation. Treat the kernels with Therum. So far seed treatment is concerned, Therum can be used as a fungicide, or Captan is also a fungicide at the rate of 5 gram per kg, or Bavistine can also be used at the rate of 4 gram per kg of kernels before sowing, so as to check seed and soil borne fungal diseases. So seed treatment is quite effective against the seed-borne diseases in this case. So it is always advisable to go for the seed treatment. Seed treatment cannot be done just with the chemicals, but there are some alternatives also, like it can also be done by some biological agents. So like Trichoderma herzianum can be used at the rate of 4 gram per kg of seed, and soil application of castor cake have given fairly good control of alpha rot, collar rot and stem rot diseases. So Trichoderma herzianum is really a good, but it is also a kind of fungus, but it can prevent the growth of other fungi and it can save our crop from seed-borne diseases. Sometimes rodents and crows are noticed to take away the seed from the field, and birds can also come. Therefore, the use of some repellents like pine tar and kerosene for seed treatment is recommended to keep the intruders away. However, care should be taken to avoid any injury to the kernel. Seed should be inoculated with proper strain of rhizobium culture, particularly in those fields where groundnut is to be raised for the first time. So far seed treatment is concerned, many times we go for seed treatment with fungicide, with the insecticide, and also in legumes we go for rhizobium treatment. So which treatment should be done first, which should be done last? So in this case, one simple acronym can be used, which is FIR. F for fungicide, I for insecticide, R for rhizobium. Here rhizobium indicates biological agents or biofertilizers. So first of all, treat with the fungicide, afterward if needed with insecticide, and thirdly with the rhizobium. So such seeds sown in the field after treatment within a short span of time after harvest require seed treatment with 0.1% ethyl to improve the germination in case of dormancy. Now we go to the sowing seasons. Groundnut predominantly is a rainy season crop, but it is now grown during pre-Rabi, Rabi, spring and summer seasons. So you can say it can be grown around the year in the country in different places. Cultivation of groundnut is picking up in Rabi season and also in summer seasons due to higher productivity and profitability, which is due to less biotic and abiotic stresses on the crop as compared to the rainy season. In certain areas of the country, now farmers are taking interest in growing this crop in spring or summer season, and it has been observed that summer season crops get good light because cloudy weather is not there and light intensity is required, and also invasion by insect pests and diseases is less. So this crop can also be grown. So we will see the sowing time in the next slide. So groundnut growing season and the situation in India. So in the first column you can see there are different seasons: Kharif, Rabi, Spring and Summer, and major states. For Kharif, it is mostly taken in Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, UP, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. The growing period is in Kharif June, July to September, October. That means it is sown in June, July and harvested in September, October. Then production system is mostly rain-fed with few protective irrigations. Then next is Rabi season. In Rabi season, the groundnut can be cultivated in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, Odisha, Karnataka and Telangana. The growing period is October-November, means sowing is done in October-November and harvesting from February to March. And it is mostly on residual moisture and minimal irrigation. The moisture which was received during Kharif season and that can be exploited, that can be used during the Rabi season in these areas. Next is your spring season. Here Gujarat, Karnataka, Maharashtra and West Bengal, it is grown in spring season starting from January, February to April and May, and it is mostly irrigated. Here you need irrigation to grow the groundnut. And then summer, Punjab is coming up to grow groundnut and it can be grown during March, April to June, July. and it is mostly irrigated crop. So these are the important seasons of groundnut: Kharif, Rabi, Spring and summer season. The Kharif season groundnut, which is grown during the southwest monsoon period, June to September or say up to October, is spread over the entire country, accounting for 80% of the total area and is raised as rain-fed. So most of the groundnut in India is grown in Kharif season. You can say 80% area is occupied during Kharif season, and it is mostly rain-fed. Because of rainfall, there is no need for irrigation, and also it is grown under rain-fed conditions. The Rabi groundnut is confined to the southern part or South India, occupying about 10% of the total area, 80% Kharif and 10% Rabi, and is mostly grown in rice fallows during October to March. A student might be knowing about the rice fallows. These are the lands which remain fallow after harvesting of the rice, mainly because of excess water. Wet conditions are there at the time of harvest of rice. So it is very difficult to grow crops in those lands. But in certain areas, now people have started growing groundnut in the rice fallow lands. The area of rice fallow in India is about 12 million hectares. Now, the summer crop, occupying about 10% of the total area, is restricted to the central and northwestern part of the country and is grown from January to June. The Rabi and summer crops are irrigated. Now, you have seen the sowing seasons. Now see the exact sowing time in different zones. Sowing of rain-fed Kharif crop depends on the onset of monsoon, and groundnut sown from June to July. So these are the 2 months during which the sowing of groundnut can be done, June to July. Under irrigated conditions of the North India, the crop is sown before the onset of rainfall for getting maximum crop stand. Crop stand here means the population of the groundnut. Sowing rain-fed and irrigated crops early in season is most conducive for proper growth and high yield. So there should not be late sowing of this crop, because early sowing always helps to get better growth and development of groundnut crop. Late planting always results in low yield. Pre-monsoon sowing of groundnuts results in higher yield of the groundnut. So it is better to start sowing before the monsoon actually rains. A delay in sowing at 7-day interval from 17th July to 24th August resulted in a linear decrease in pod yield of groundnut. It suggests that it should be sown before 15 July. In a normal sown crop, that is first week of July, the pattern of flowering is regular with 2 distinct peaks of flowering, whereas in late sown crop, end of July, erratic pattern of flowering indicates low yielding ability of the crop. The pod size can decrease, the number of seeds in pod can also decrease, and number of pods itself can decrease. Rabi groundnut in the south is generally raised on residual moisture after the harvest of the rice crop. For this crop, optimum time of sowing is November in case of South India for Rabi groundnut. For irrigated summer crop, December, January sowing is ideal in the south, whereas in the West Bengal, mid-February is optimum. In northwest plain zones, the first fortnight of March is optimum. Remember, this is first fortnight of March, which is optimum for sowing summer groundnut. Some scope is happening in Punjab, say in Rajasthan also. Optimum time of sowing for important groundnut growing states for different seasons is given in the next slide. So let us check the exact sowing time of this crop in different states. So in the first column you have state, and in the second column you have the optimum time of sowing. For Gujarat, it is mid-June to mid-July, optimum time of sowing. For AP, Andhra Pradesh, first fortnight of June. First fortnight means first 15 days, say 1 to 15 June. In Tamil Nadu, first fortnight of July. In Karnataka, first week of June for bunchy type and last week of June to end of July for spreading type. You can see the sowing time is different for varieties in Karnataka. Maharashtra, last week of June to first week of July. In UP, it is mid-June to mid-July. In Rajasthan, it is middle of July. For Madhya Pradesh, last week of June to the first week of July. Now, optimum sowing time in Rabi season, you can see for Tamil Nadu, for Andhra Pradesh, for West Bengal, for Odisha and for the state Karnataka, it is October, November for Rabi season. Optimum sowing time in spring season. For Gujarat, it is first week of February. For Karnataka, first fortnight of December, that means 1 to 15th of December. Maharashtra, it is December, January. Now, after the spring season crop, let us check for the optimum sowing time in summer season. As already discussed, that in summer season, Punjab groundnut is being grown. So, for Punjab, the sowing time is March and April. That means this groundnut in Punjab can be sown after harvest of the Rabi crop. In Rabi crop, you can find in Punjab mustard, you can find potato or you can find wheat crop. And after harvest of these crops, you can grow groundnut in Punjab. Now, optimum sowing time in Rabi season for Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, Odisha and Karnataka, October, November. Optimum sowing time, this is already discussed. And now coming to the method of sowing. The seeds are sown by a pora attached to a desi plough or using a seed drill. In the case of irrigated crop, dibbling seeds on ridges prepared by plough is preferred. In either of the cases, the depth of sowing should be 5 to 8 centimeter in light soils and 4 to 6 centimeter in other moderately heavy to heavy soils. Now, sowing can be done by different implements. You can use desi plough, you can use planting machines, some planters are also available, seed drills are also available, lot of options exist. Here the sowing depth is also important. You can see in lighter soils, the sowing depth is more, that is 5 to 8 centimeter. But in heavier soils, the sowing depth is 4 to 6 centimeter. What could be the reason? The reason is simple, that in sandy soils or in light texture soils, the moisture is not there on the surface of the soil. So, you need to go little deep in sandy soils. However, in clay soils or heavy texture soils, you get good moisture even on the surface. Therefore, seeding depth is less in clay soil than in sandy soils. Now, different land configurations and methods of sowing are followed under different agroclimatic conditions. So, one method may not suit to all other regions. So, it varies with the region, it varies with the variety you are going to have, climatic conditions, soil conditions, all will govern the sowing method. Also, the economic status of the farmer will also decide the method of sowing. But mostly it is flat bed method of sowing which is common, and especially under irrigated conditions, flat bed method is adopted. In the Saurashtra region of Gujarat, set furrow and wider row spacing, that is 90 centimeter, is the common practice, and this is a improved version also. Set furrow is being replaced by paired row planting. Now, one more advancement is made, that is paired row planting. Planting in rows means two rows. Pair means 2 rows in many cases, which has been found to increase the yield sustainability. There are reports which suggest that paired row planting is useful. In this method, two pairs of rows are spaced at 45 centimeter, and within the pairs, the seeds are sown at 22.5 centimeter spacing. This is quite interesting. Within the pair, 22.5 centimeter, and between two pairs, it is 45 centimeter spacing. So, therefore, in this method, the plant population is evenly distributed and the interplant competition for light, moisture, nutrients is reduced to a greater extent, resulting in higher pod yield. Under these conditions, there is better utilization of natural resources, particularly light, and there is minimum competition within the plants also. Therefore, one get better seed yield of groundnut in this method. In certain areas, crisscross sowing during the post-rainy season is also recommended for getting higher seed yield. So, crisscross sowing means you can divide the seed, the total seed can be divided into two equal half, and one way you can do sowing say from north to south, second time you can also do sowing from south to north. So, of course, this is a bit tedious, not in much practice. However, the practice is followed in rice-based cropping systems to avoid low plant stands due to poor soil health, but it has got some merit also under certain conditions. Minimization of interplant competition and optimum plant stand is responsible for yield improvement in this method of sowing. So, you can see competition is minimized and plant stand is also optimized. Next is broad bed furrow method, quite good method and recommended method of planting groundnut, and recommended for sowing the crop both under high and low rainfall area. This is quite interesting. It is useful under both high and low rainfall areas for better management of rainfall water for improving the productivity of the crop. How it is possible? Because if there is high rainfall, that means water can be drained through the furrows which are between the two beds. These furrows can act as a drainage channel and also retain some water. Similarly, under dry conditions or less rainfall condition, these same furrow can conserve the water and which will have lateral movement and can supply to the crop. On an average, 15% higher yield has been recorded under the broad bed furrow method of sowing over flat sowing. Flat sowing is normal sowing. Yield increase may be attributed to the reduction in soil compaction around the root zone, pod zone, better conservation of moisture and uniform plant stand. Now, you can check the different methods here. This is set row cultivation of groundnut in Saurashtra region. This is one method. Another method is broad bed furrow planting. Here you can see this is a broad bed. This one is broad bed, and in between two broad beds you have the furrow, and this furrow acts as a drainage channel and it also conserves some moisture. Then you can see very good method paired row planting in this. This is paired row planting. So, dear students, it seems that you could gain a lot from this lecture, and I hope that you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you very much.